Welcome to this PINE+RAIN Studio Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something that's honestly a bit alarming. We're going to unpack how our culture's pathological obsession with youth is actually a dangerous double-edged sword. On one hand, it completely erases the wisdom of maturity, and on the other, it radically distorts how we treat our children. We're going to look at how this intense fear of aging marginalizes older adults while simultaneously fueling a deeply troubling fetishization of youth. Let's get right into it.
To really understand this, listen to how one 68-year-old research participant described their experience. They called the constant cultural demand to look young just like sugar or fast food. They said it's a total denial of allowing people to age gracefully. And honestly, that beautifully captures just how normalized our toxic youth culture has become, doesn't it? It's so deeply ingrained in our daily lives through ads, movies, social media, that we barely even question this endless pursuit of a completely unachievable ideal.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why exactly are we so utterly terrified of growing up? Well, the roots of this go deep into what researchers call the cult of youth. We live in a culture that treats aging like it's a disease to be cured or some enemy to be fought off, rather than what it actually is, a totally natural, inevitable biological process. And this fear, it isn't just something we happen to feel organically, it's a meticulously crafted anxiety.
To put that into perspective, think about this number. $50.2 billion. That was the estimated value of the global anti-aging industry in 2018 alone. This multi-billion-dollar empire literally profits from promoting the fear of maturity. They sell us the idea of agelessness through creams, surgeries, supplements, you name it. The underlying message is crystal clear. Aging is a problem, and if you just spend enough money, you can stop time in its tracks.
And you know, the ultimate irony of this whole industry is exactly this. Anti-aging means you can get as old as you want, just as long as you still look young. Sociologists point out that in our modern neoliberal society, human value is heavily tied to youthful productivity and aesthetics. If you aren't seen as a productive or youthful member of the workforce, you essentially lose your perceived cultural worth. Society just kind of forces older adults into the shadows simply because their natural appearance contradicts this highly profitable narrative that youth equals value.
And this has profound, devastating psychological consequences. Take Meyer, another 68-year-old participant. Their words were heartbreaking. "I see myself as invisible now. People look through me." This really grounds the sociological data in stark reality. We aren't just talking about abstract concepts here. This is the daily lived experience of older adults who suddenly find themselves totally marginalized. They're erased from public view, overlooked in lines at the store, and dismissed in conversations simply because they don't fit the aesthetic of youth anymore.
Now, I have to point out that this erasure is distinctly gendered. The media portrays aging entirely differently for men and women. Older men, they're frequently celebrated as silver foxes. They're seen as distinguished, authoritative, capable. But meanwhile, older women become the invisible woman, facing these incredibly strict internalized beauty standards. They are heavily pressured by the media and that massive anti-aging industry to use cosmetic surgery to maintain any proximity to a youthful ideal. If they don't, they risk being entirely erased from cultural relevance.
And modern media physically manifests this erasure everywhere you look. Hollywood and television focus almost exclusively on youthful narratives. Have you ever noticed that? Even when older characters are on screen, they're frequently played by smooth-faced 40 or 50-year-olds. It completely hides what real aging actually looks like. And when actual older adults are shown, they're usually shoved into these extreme stereotypes. They're either frail and dependent, or they're the wealthy, carefree, Freedom 55 ideal. This profound lack of authentic representation on screen directly drives the social marginalization we see in real life.
But here's where it gets even more complicated. The fear of aging doesn't just impact our elders. It creates what's known as the mirror effect. Erasing the old inevitably distorts the young. The exact same cultural forces that cause us to run away from maturity cause us to inappropriately project adult concepts onto children. It's two sides of the exact same coin.
To really wrap our heads around this, we need to define a core sociological concept: adultification. Basically, this is the societal shift where children are increasingly treated as miniature adults. Because the media, entertainment, and fashion industries are constantly blurring the boundaries of childhood, young people are exposed to adult behaviors, expectations, and sexualization way too soon. It is a massive structural shift in how our culture defines the very boundary between child and adult. Sociologist Jacques Levin's research meticulously details the consequences of blurring these boundaries, and it's pretty alarming. We're seeing 8-year-old girls increasingly treated as sexual objects by the fashion and media industries. This creates a really confusing, highly commercialized blend of childlike innocence and adult sexuality. But it goes way beyond just aesthetics. This adultification is also reflected in things like the dismantling of the juvenile justice system in favor of adult punishments and in treating children as if they're self-sufficient miniature adults who are entirely capable of raising themselves.
This blurring of boundaries creates a highly dangerous environment for kids. When the media and fashion industries routinely sexualize youth, it dangerously relaxes the societal norms and boundaries that are specifically meant to protect childhood innocence. In fact, sources point out that this fuels a complex moral panic around pedophilia where media sensationalism blurs the lines. By treating children as miniature adults, society basically opens the door to exploitation, making it fundamentally harder to protect vulnerable youth from real-world harm.
So what does this dual obsession with youth mean for us individually? Well, let's hear from Cayer, a 35-year-old research participant. They said, "I don't know if I actually believe that it's going to make me stay young. I think it's more of the pursuit of it." I mean, that is so revealing, right? Even young adults feel this compulsory need to actively resist aging through consumer products. We've completely internalized the fear of losing the one status our culture truly values, which is youth.
And that psychological toll just keeps going as we age into adulthood. There's this one millennial on Reddit who captured the feeling perfectly. Ours is the gaslit generation. Older generations act like we are in high school. Because only youth culture is valued, adults who are approaching their 30s and 40s report feeling deeply infantilized. They've internalized the belief that their maturity isn't some badge of honor. Instead, they're simply treated like grown children by a society that refuses to acknowledge the actual dignity of true adulthood.
So this brings us to the overarching concept of this whole explainer. Juvenescence. This is defined as a cultural obsession with perpetual youthfulness that inherently devalues maturity, aging, and the wisdom of experience. As we've seen today, from the billion-dollar anti-aging creams, to the adultification of children, to the total invisibility of our elders, this obsession harms us at literally every single stage of life. It traps us in an impossible pursuit and completely robs us of the grace of simply growing into ourselves.
Which leaves us with this final, absolutely vital question to ponder. When will we finally value the art of growing up? We all have these internalized biases shaped by the cult of youth. But by recognizing how our cultural norms manipulate us, we can actually start to push back. We can reject the fear of aging and reclaim the dignity, the wisdom, and the true beauty of maturity. Something to think about.